All right, so we're going to work on composition of functions, which is when they ask for f of g of x and g of f of x. Notice in f of g of x, you replace the x in f of x with g of x. So if we look at example 1, we're given f of x and g of x, and we're asked first for f of g of x. So f of g of x is when you take the f function, which is 3x plus 2, and you replace the x in the f function with whatever g is. So instead of writing 3x plus 2, I'm going to write 3 and replace the x with whatever g is, x minus 5, and then bring down the rest of the f function, which is plus 2. So keep in mind that anytime you have an expression, meaning anything with plus or minus, it needs to be substituted in parentheses. Otherwise, the distributing won't be done correctly. So keep that in mind. You're just writing the f function. You're replacing the x in f of x with whatever g is. So in this case, from here, after I substitute it in, it's just a matter of distributing, giving me 3x minus 15, drop down the plus 2 you haven't used, for a final answer of 3x minus 13. It also asks for g of f of x. So to find g of f of x, notice in the second line above, you're just replacing the x in g of x with f of x. So I'm going to do the exact opposite now. I'm going to replace the x in the g function with whatever f is. So I'm going to write still the g function, which is x minus 5, except I'm going to replace the x with whatever f is, which is 3x plus 2, and then I'll write the minus 5. Again, I put it in parentheses because it has a plus sign. It's an expression. The worst thing that can happen is that there's nothing to distribute, and then I don't have to have the parentheses, but I can get rid of it there. So just always substitute in parentheses just to keep it safe, because you may have to distribute. Combining like terms after this, g of f of x will give you 3x minus 3. So here you have g of f of x, and here you have f of g of x. And then for the second problem, you'll see an assignment problem similar to this where they're working backwards. They're giving you f of g of x, and they're asking you to write the two functions instead. So I could write f of x as 3 over x plus 6. And I could write g of x as, well, what could I replace the x with to give me 3 over x to the third power plus 6? Because notice I almost have the same thing I was given in the question. The only thing is I would replace the x with x to the third power. So that's what I'm going to make my g of x. And these are the two functions. So if I wanted to check it, we're going to do exactly what we did in the first problem. So I will write f of x, 3 over x plus 6, but I'm going to replace the x with the g function, which is x to the third. Drop down the plus 6. So it gives me the same function as the one given. I hope this helps.